In this movie, I cover a topic that is important that we know about, and that topic is inheritance. Now, inheritance is so important because it greatly affects our use of CSS. In fact, we've already seen it at work in our previous movie's example. Did you notice anything about how we didn't specify that we wanted to affect the paragraphs, but they were affected anyway? Well, that's inheritance at work. In essence, all children elements in a parent element will use the styles applied to that parent. And of course, if this child and parent stuff doesn't make a lot of sense right now, we will cover the subject of the DOM in an upcoming movie. Now, of course, the DOM is the document object model that a lot of our web technologies are based upon. So inheritance is kind of building off that concept of the DOM, because we have these parent elements that contain children elements. So what this is saying is if we apply a style to a parent element, all of the children of that element, being elements that are contained inside of that, will inherit the style. So that's how our paragraph tags got affected, because they are children of the body tag. So if you end up taking a look at your HTML here, you'll see that we have the body tag, and then everything else is contained inside of that body tag. So here we have body tag, and then an H1, a paragraph, an unordered list, and so forth. Now, everything inside of that body tag did indeed get affected, because we can end up seeing that right here. The only thing that didn't really get affected is the image that's up here. The reason why is because an image is the content itself. There's no way that we can change the color of that image just with CSS. We have to use an external image editing program. But anyway, you end up seeing all of these children elements being affected by our rule. Now, this concept of inheritance actually saves us a lot of time and file size, as it allows us to quickly set up styles to apply to the entire page rather than having to go through and explicitly restate the same style for every single HTML element in our document. So rather than having to go through and state paragraph color red and H1 color red, we can just do this by applying color red to the parent element. So it's actually quite handy. Now, we can also use inherit as a property value to ensure that an element uses the setting of its parent. In general, most properties are inherited. However, properties that affect the placement of elements on the page are not inherited. Now let's go ahead and jump back over to the sandbox to get a little demonstration of how inheritance works. We are going to add a rule that overrides and uses this principle of inheritance. So let's take a look again here. And let's set a rule for our paragraphs. So I'll do P. And then I'll go ahead and put in my scroll braces just so I don't forget it later on. And I will set it to a color of lime. I'll save that and refresh. And here we see that all of the elements that were paragraphs now are colored lime. Notice how it does not affect the heading tags or the list items, because we have specifically said only affect the paragraph tag. So everything that's inside of the paragraphs will be affected. Now, to wrap this movie up, I want to say that inheritance is an important concept that will definitely influence our designs, but it can be easily overwritten by stating more specific rules for children elements. I also want to remind you that if the parent-child element stuff doesn't make a lot of sense at this point, don't worry about it too much, because we will briefly review what the DOM is in an upcoming movie when we talk more about selectors. So that concludes this look at inheritance.